needs compassion, a love that's never failing. Let mercy fall on me. Everyone needs forgiveness, the kindness of the Savior, the hope of nations. Savior.
This is Chariot.
Yo, yeah, the incha efe already Christo ho edema obi biara, and we welcome you to Apologetic Hour. Senior da yenemo eyeno sajumadi yede boa senior beya dodo ye gidi and I saw mujidi him because yen to me and defended the faith in our one intino. Sajumadi boa ama ye gidi no etumi ejina. And if you have been following us for the past 2 weeks, Jumadi Yedi Yato, and I say what we are discussing is alleged Bible contradictions. Na senior Debia ye kachre mono, the mbet me aye ediaboa Jumadi and is on our various social media handles, Facebook, X, or previously Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Opa, Chariot TV. Na subscribe it, like and share. Send a beya afufronso ebenye bi etie. Our brother Jonathan Mensah Bonsu will be with us again today as we continue our discussion on alleged Bible contradictions. Into Yenya Jonathan.
Yeah. I did.
Jonathan.
Yes.
Apomo.
Nyamiado, me hoye. Now say.
Yes, there was ahofama commitment wo ene emra onya da bia na woni yen eche Nyankopon asem se yebotai e baako se nipa nyina behu nokre no na nokre no ama omoye adehye. So we thank you very much for your time, brother. Na metumi hu say if you have short message 1 minute be at the my etie for her na ye de enedwumadi ne so e de ahye ase.
Yeah, say me da se so na ye beda ahwefo ase se dan na no. Omo gibre. Enye easy but omo gibre ebo adwumadi no e woni hwem. Esi ye na obi ara nhwa na ye koya na ye bai. But adofo boa emo modern bia ye videos charity videos throughout the week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but adofo gibre ehwe adwumadi ye nyina ye da omasi. Nti bu se open 1 minute ni maybe I catch ahwefo a gidi se sana meka.
Yo yeda wase na yebetwa adesua ne so sene yaka kire etiefo no. We are looking at alleged Bible contradictions, and I think
Okay.
the past 2 weeks has been very the enuanom edi ekire ene nsembisa ene clarifications ne abasoba ebana ehyenkran bebre, and that alone is a motivation for us to say asem no eko changing one person at a time, and I say changing one perception at a time. That is our goal. See, Nyankopon say ewo saa ekwan so. Last time, discussion, I think say na share principles nipa behwe because you can say call internet and so no can say share contradictions like just from Google, you will see a lot. we are letting people understand, say, they are alleged. Now, we'll look at some of them. Then we will endorse into me and discussing, and that is why the early stages, we are trying to focus on principles. Neomabia, so be enya at their fingertips as they approach the Bible. No, send a bear, a beboa, na to me, I confront some of these questions. No, but before that, my main cast asked me, I think the first week will be at the comments be at the by or say yata a use your friends saying the word Christendom. Yes. Said the yeka contest as no or say yema contest, and that I think say the word Christendom in general no is used to refer to the Christian with quoted marks Christian community, and I say from who some year Christopher.
And those who affiliate with Christianity, say ubia obo Yesu din and I would say Yesu Christu ebe we are ajenkwa we are ajenkwa. That's affiliate with Christianity, yeah.
Exactly. And it's here, yes, and you can say at the swing. The case here, no, even though say yeah, we are trying to answer the critics now. Almost said there are contradictions. No, most Christians, they can't actually for a Christopher. Any those who affiliate themselves with Christianity, maybe they shun away from even engaging in some of these discussions because almost say, ebi anu want to me any ye, na lead to arguments any ahun kan woni ade. Nti no adesua no ekwa mo bibia, and we think say through this no so no obi ete ase a obete ye Church of Christ your point of view ye tre no da bia ye ka no some of these difficult areas na nkofo person be venture ho no this will let them understand say Church of Christ enra na ye ne obi kana ga say also per word na no pa asem no na so pe Bible na sua pa dia any sorry ye read Bible no ye de ye Bible no yedi is part of it's like our food Church of Christ. And we want people to understand this Bible you bet me esua atiase, and we are reaching out to all the those who affiliate themselves with Christianity no na monke ho me nsua na yenim se we nso bet me abo anti ye da se bebre na me pese me de we editwam. Now, last week, additional principles, and I think that you made very good point, 2 good points. And they to also okay, and they say we have to look at the context, and that is a big deal. Context, a big deal. It's very broad. And we'll begin from there. Now, yeah, 2 principles. If there are more principles, also they can't one swan. Obey me at the account. And say, Brother Joe, boy.
So Mamenka about the context again. Last time no, which I also said you have to examine the text in its context. Examine the text in its context. And let me give an example. Sometimes it poses a problem. No, because Islamic school from me year 1, grade 1, at JSS 3 level. So I completed in Islamic school, and platform we as a school year group platform school platforms like past school near the platform and the more platform maybe so I have a lot of Muslims in a group like that. So I was there and Muslim, and they normally ridicule Christianity in Saniman. I was there and I saw a Muslim quote these 2 passages, and his point is that these passages are contradictory. You remember Jesus feeding some multitude, and the question was, is it 5,000 or is it 4,000? That was his question. And these are the 2 passages. Matthew 14, verse 21, and
Yes.
Mark chapter 8, verse 9. Yen kan ni near Matthew 14. Say, Matthew 14, verse 21. Yes.
Matthew 14. Yen kind Matthew no first. Verse 21. May kind every New King James version. No. A whole kind say. Now, those who had eaten were about 5,000 men, besides women and children.
Okay, so the Matthew is clear. In Matthew 14, verse 21, say, no, 5,000 men. In fact, men hear me, 5,000 men, and that was what is important to him. So definitely to be important to me. Now come Mark on so now Mark 8, verse 9. What's it?
Also, a kind say Mark chapter 8, verse number 9. No. A whole kind say, now those who had eaten were about 4,000, and he sent them away.
Okay, so in Mark context, so Mark say your the 4,000, then he sent them away. So the question is it 5,000 or 4,000? 5,000 for, and that was his ridicule. Opposed to those things, then ridicule. Is it 4,000 or 5,000? Which one is true? Well, the truth is that is the context. See, most people assume that Jesus feeding people. It happened at one time. That's something even among school, they assume that yes, yeah, that's the we know that it's just one incident that happened here. Yes, if you and the past 5,000 with two I think 5 loaves and 2 fishes or something. Yes, that's what we know.
Event, and I won't for dream.
That is the popular one.
Yes,
but the other side is that there are two scenarios, there are two separate events that happen, which people normally don't pay attention to. So he threw these passages out and he was making a fun of Christianity and stuff like that. The issue is this: people don't examine context. People don't examine the context. Now, if a person is not examining the context, the person would definitely be making mistake. So, the Mark, Matthew, and just let's try and see if Matthew has these 4,000 and 5,000, whether we can find these two separate events in Matthew. Those separate events are found in Matthew. Jesus fed at one point in time, Jesus fed 5,000 men with bread. At a certain point in time, Jesus fed 4,000 people. So those are two different contexts in the Bible, but both of them happened in Matthew. So maybe a kenka was Matthew chapter 14. Matthew 14. You share the me at Matthew chapter 14. My kind from verse 13 ever. Matthew 14, verse 13. See, when he heard it, he departed from the boat and to the desert place by himself. And when the multitude heard it, they followed him on foot into the city. And Jesus went out. He saw a great multitude, and he moved with compassion for them and healed the sick. And when it was evening, his disciples came to him, saying, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is already late. Send the multitude away that they may go to the village and buy for themselves food." And he said, they do not need to go away. You will give them something to eat. And they said to him, "We have only 5 loaves and 2 fishes." So in Matthew 14, verse 17, they said this, that we have 2 loaves and 5 loaves and 2 fishes. 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Verse 18 he said, "Bring them here." And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass, and he took the 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and he broke. So he looked up to heaven. He blessed and broke it and gave the loaves to the disciples, and he gave them to his multitude, and all ate and were filled. And they took up 12 baskets full of fragments and remained, blah, blah, blah. And those who were eating were about 5,000 men, beside women. Yes, beside women and children. Go to the next chapter. So this is what happened in Matthew chapter 14. He fed 5,000 men. Look at next chapter in Matthew chapter 15. Verse verse 32. Verse 32 says, now Jesus called his disciples to himself and said, I have compassion on the multitude because they continue with me 3 days, okay, and have nothing to eat. And I do not want to send them away hungry, lest they faint away. Then the disciples said to him, where could we get enough bread in the wilderness to fill such great multitude? He said unto them, how many loaves do you have? And they said, 7 and a very little fish.
Fishes.
Keep in mind that the bakuna you can't want some was 5 loaves, and 2 fishes. But we also say 7 and a very little fish. He commanded the multitude to sit down, and he took the 7 loaves and fish and gave thanks, broke them, and gave them to disciples, and they gave them to the multitude. And so they all ate and were filled. And they took up the 7 baskets full of fragments and that were left. And those who ate were 4,000 men, beside women and children. So clearly, there are 2 incidents that happened.
Yeah.
So if Onipa examine the context, you just be confusing himself and going around making case that the Bible is contradicting, not knowing that the Bible is talking about 2 different scenarios. In fact, that was pointed out to the Muslim and the culture was opposed to WhatsApp platforms. When they explained that there are 2 different contexts, he was so shocked. He was so shocked. Telling you that some of these people, they just go to the Bible and just be picking up passages, trying to arrange them against each other.
Baby. And
Yeah.
that's what is speaking.
Yes.
On take the pen even to verify said the nipako kaina or no jina sumpono sa ne yatrona.
Yeah.
A hard thing, and I think it's very important. And unti yes, yeah, and I don't know, sir. You still want to finish the point that you?
No, you can continue. You can continue with it.
Yes, the test must be examined in its context. No 2 ways about it. And like I said the other time, it is words that make up sentences. Now, example, first word the bear, bear, bear. Now, ubisa akwala say, what's the meaning of bear? Akwala swapa no ahwe obe chro aboa kese bi because that's what they are very familiar with. But see, say the bear jumped into the water. Now, Obinson Ebeka said, God will provide a way to so that you escape and you can bear temptations. We know, the same word bear has been used, but the context is what? It's way different. And we cannot conclude on the interpretation of any sentence without looking at the context. Literally, we have to see, what trust him and that's our Bible. The say we have the literal context and we have to sometimes look at the immediate context. Sometimes okay, the whole chapter now, so you have to look at an entire book, or sometimes even go to another book that the same writer has written to understand the terminologies. A good example is the word faith. We use the word faith. Paul used faith. I think Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8 and 9. Say, Emre Yenkain intentem. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8 and 9. I'll say, for by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourself, it is a gift of God, not of works, lest you should boast. But the James chapter 2, verse 14, Obeka Cho say, faith without works is what? Is dead. A casual reader, Obeka idea, now I jump into conclusions, say, they are contradicting themselves. But over the context, James Ekasa, over context, Paul, use the word faith. And I say the context, James and so, assembly more. Who said they are different. If we are looking at immediate context, I think that one it is one of the discussed one of our programs on Matthew chapter 24. It's a year confusion the Christian community anymore. Another the Christendom, no. It's a confusion. People think say Matthew 24 test na refer say Christo baby. In verse 34, when Christ said, there are some of you standing here, you will not taste death. And I said, you see this happening. And some more will know. People quickly jump and say, we are about 2,000 years after Christ left. And we have not seen any visitor coming from heaven. They said, yeah, we will see Christ coming in the clouds and everything now. Yeah, description of the mind. But a serious student, and I will be open to if you go to the media context of 24, no shall say a kind of year, who say Christ was referring to Jerusalem. And I say Jerusalem, they say, no. And he brought that say, and I think say it's very important if say another point that you want to make in this regard now. But what me too, so over to me.
Yes, to close up on the context, mechanic say, though one movie I say and answer more or Bible say Bible contradicting, they don't examine the context. It's also for us Christians, you defending Yakupasem na to also know the context. Because sometimes then make about example I'm dema we know. Yeah, nipa pina 5,000 those. 5,000. Yes. So if the first time we show these two passages to you, one we have because that's a Sunday school, you catch a meaning. So that will give you the problem. But if you really know the context or depending the bar, you can easily point out that there are two separate accounts and one seven. Though they might look similar, but they are two separate accounts in the same or Mark, or Matthew. So it's not contradictory at all. And clearly, no, it beats me at one senior. So that's up with the context. Say deeper in my Bible no kind. Now use your Bible in its context. Pick the text in its context. Never boy. The second, the back what was what.
Context. I mean for way in fan count and
sure.
Especially the Christo for yes, so the assembly for I say and especially still on the literary way no contest, no. Sometimes even where commas and full stops are placed, nipa bebree and and my instructor be no issue example Ephesians chapter 4 verse 28. I think there's a popular quotation. Or say, let him who stole steal no longer. Then there's a comma. But rather, let him labor, working with his hands, what is good, that he may have something to give him who has need. The comma is after no longer. No. Let's just bring this comma to after the word still. Kind the same as no. I bet you, let him who stole steal no longer, but rather let him labor. Intino, ebema asemno asesa ewoha. Intino, I think that whilst we are answering some of the tests, we are better be but mama yenya abotre na yen kind to say yesu ade send yesua ade de control exams a yesua no de di babadie no. We have to look at the context, examine the test in its context. And I like the point you made, I think the first day, and he said, any test, biya na yebe tu na basa, na no kwa yede aye adwuma no, we are doing pre-test. We are doing pre-test. Nti yada se papa ewo sa efen. Please, let's continue. I said.
So yeah, so the other principle, the third principle, I think, is worth keeping. And they said, in studying the Bible, no, we should not confuse imprecision with error. We should not confuse imprecision with error, because the imprecision, you see, imprecision means that not exact, not exact. So, in math terms, we say you have run up, you run up or run down. You are running figures. Or running figure. If I say, 9,998. I say, okay, instead of saying 998, it's 1,000. We're running it up to 1,000, but the value is not exactly 1,000. It's exactly 998. And the reason why I made sure I said, in the Bible, no, the Bible was written at the time their culture allowed for running up. They were not bothered with exact values. In Bible times, what I mean is that in Bible times, so at be 999, 98, he will just run it up and say 1,000. That doesn't mean that nipa can on contebu and a contradiction. A Bible no is not mad person. But the point is that in Bible times, imprecision was there. They were living a culture where they ran up. Yeah, culture we are so exact on certain things. Like we can say 2.118 and we are particular about it. Even with that, it depends on your on your field. For instance, in Kontebu American, say be an engineer, they don't bother much about particular details. They round them up. Oh, they round engineers will round values up and do what they want to do, and it works because round up values essentially solve their problems for them, and they are good with it. But to be to say, be a young mass and casa and as to be a fixed animal, they care about decimal places. How far? Sometimes they can keep as far as maybe 10 decimal places to keep what they are trying to see, so that they can deal with it, because they care about precision. Like that, they care about precision. So even in our modern era, we allow such things to happen simply because in our context. So clearly, the Bible too has that, but sometimes the critics and I wanna or kind Bible no or person who Bible nothing with the 21st century lens or glass, and that is sad. Young kind a passage be to explain what I mean. Or Second Chronicles chapter 4 verse 2. I just want us to read that. Verse 7. He's talking about a bath that Solomon made, sort of a bathtub, or you can say a pool. Solomon Emeki, but it was in a cauldron. It's a bathtub. See, Anna Solomon, where he can swim a bath in it or something like that. But in Second Chronicles chapter 4, verse 2, no, I mean, kind of verse 1, okay, but verse 1, I say, moreover, he made a bronze altar. 20 cubits was its length, 20 cubits was its width, and a 10 cubit was its height. Fine. Verse 2. Then he made a sea of cast bronze. So he's talking about the pond now, make it sort of a pond where you bath in it or something. 10 cubits from brim to brim. 10 cubits from brim to brim means that Fanny a anchor now not if you are not ano baako ekwa ano baako the brim as anchor now no circular. The brim to brim is 10 cubits, telling you that that's in math terms that's a diameter, a 10 cubit diameter from 10 to 10. Then he made a point that 10 cubits from brim to the other, it was completely round. Its height was 5 cubits, and a line of 30 cubits measured its circumference. So quite around that circumference will be 30 cubits, but from brim to brim, its length from brim to brim is 10 cubits. Well, someone who does math will certainly say, no, the Bible is wrong. It's wrong in the sense that the Bible is not correct. The reason why they will say that is that we know from our basic math class, they say circumference equals pi times diameter. That's what we know in math. Circumference equals pi times diameter. Pi is also 3.14 blah 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 plenty, right? So if you are to multiply a 10 by 3.14, you get a 31.14. You won't get 30 cubits. But the Bible deals with rounding up values. So the Bible just said that 30 cubits, and all of a sudden then the skeptic will say, no, the Bible is wrong. The Bible's math is not good because pi there is not 3. Pi is 3.144142, blah, blah. But the Bible is rounding it up. So if I say, I shall foreshadowing they said, imprecision should not be confused with error. Imprecision should not be. The Bible is not paying attention to it. But the Bible is not a math textbook where he's giving us significant figures or 10 decimal place or 2 decimal place or 4 decimal place. No, the Bible, he rounds up values. And we see that oftentimes in the Bible, that the Bible writers are rounding up values. And when they are rounding up values, we don't charge them with bad math, or we don't charge them with error on their part. But the point is that it's the culture in which they were living that allows them to be able to behave those things. A third one which I'll throw in is that we should not confuse imprecision with error.
Yeah, that's Bebre. We thank you very much for that point. I think it's baby, yeah, kind of Mark chapter 8 in 4,000 or 4,000 say about. And unya some of the English translations now they will use that. And say will be a record of the same test, with the number no number in the big one. We say error. But we have to understand say there are imprecisions, especially when it comes to numbers. Especially when it comes to numbers. And in the book of Chronicles, there are a lot of it. It's a your first way, Obi can say, Yankasa, especially Jew Chronicles and numbers, now we'll take some more tests. Now, fair honor. That's pass, for example, the fake Chronicles. And this is one of the reasons numbers in particular, it will not follow your friends, formless. In the sense, even in science and as a math, we know that formulas and principles are being refined to make them as precise as possible. That is why we have cutting-edge technologies this time. As Amre no ye ni sadie no nti emre ekwe anim no nimdie no ekwe anim no na yeah we are making our calculations more precise and precise. Samre ya ye kase na dem bebre emaye nti thank you very much sir. Imprecision should not be confused as error. Thank you very much for that point.
Yeah, the fourth one, I think, said true in other principles. And said the Old Testament codes were not meant to be verbatim. Because the Old Testament code, you realize the New Testament that the Old Testament is quoted massively. There's several quotations from the Old Testament, but the reason is that the Old Testament, the principle now, the person out of Jim say, Old Testament codes were not meant to be verbatim, and there are other reasons why they were not meant to be verbatim, which we will talk about that. But Jim say Old Testament the apambofro passage be equal to New Old Testament. Apambofro passage equal to apam that there be passage. It's not meant that the apambofro will quote it verbatim. Because verbatim or be quote to straight. Send it exactly or fire no their show, baby. Yes, and it was not meant for that. And that shouldn't give us a problem. I mean, about 2 passages. I'm out 2 instances. Let me see. So about 4 passages. I quote an Old Testament passage. Then I quote to how the New Testament quoted that passage. Now, another passage, must quote Old Testament, and you see that there is variation in it. Young Zachariah concerning Jesus Christ crucifixion in Zechariah chapter 12 verse 10.
Zechariah 12.
Chapter 12 verse 10. Or say, and I'll pour on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and supplication, and they will look on me whom they pierced. Yes, they will mourn as one who mourns for his only son, and grieve for him who grieve for the only son. Right. So baby hear me pie. We hear text now say the spirit of grace and supplication. Then they will look on me. This is where my point is. They will look on me whom they pierced. They will look on me whom they pierced. That is in Zechariah chapter 12 verse 10. They will look on me whom they pierced. But Yanko John, this passage is quoted in John 19:37.
John 19, verse 37. Oh,
Yes.
okay.
I say, and again, another scripture. We're talking about the Bible. Again, another scripture says, they will look on him whom they pierced. See, he said, and again, they will look on him whom they pierced. So the question will be there, hey, now, where as some are okay, you know, but heaven or he's quoting from Zechariah. But if you examine both of them, you say, also they will look on him whom they have pierced. But Zechariah said that they will look on me. Zechariah used the word, they use me, whom they have pierced. But John, Jesus quote sayings, you know, John quoted that passage, and in making application, John said that they will look on him. In other words, John applied it to Jesus Christ as and made it a point that is the quote from the Old Testament. So clearly, no, it's not meant for to be verbatim. And you don't make judgment and say, hey, John will quote, you know, what Daniel 7, therefore it's an error, or it is a contradiction on that part. No, it's not that, because Old Testament quotes were not meant to be verbatim. Mama, another example. You remember Jesus echo ne kura Nazareth. Now Udu ne kura hono. They handed him the book of Isaiah to read. Let's read that passage in Isaiah. So you Isaiah and I yanka Yesu de nankasa kra. Yesu call Nazareth no. John Luke chapter 4. Ana omuma no uduru na synagogue no mu panyini, the ruler of the synagogue no allow a catcher and say ruler uncle kind today. And Jesus, yes, Jesus opened the scriptures and read. So look at Matthew and Luke chapter 4, verse 18, let me read verse 16 about saying, and he came to Nazareth where he had been brought up, and as his custom, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up to read. And he was handed the book of the prophet Isaiah. And when he had opened the book, he found the place where it is written, the Spirit of God is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel of God, to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberties to the captives, and to recover of sight to the blind, to set liberty those who are oppressed, and to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. That is Luke chapter 4, verse 18 and 19. But again, let's go to Isaiah. Maybe Isaiah 61. Isaiah 61.
The Spirit of the Lord God is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good tidings to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound. Proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, to console those who mourn in Zion, to give them beauty for ashes, the oil
Well,
of joy for mourning.
yeah. But what kind more crowd than even? But look at verse latter part of the verse 1, or say to proclaim liberty to the captives. Okay,
Yeah.
to proclaim liberty to the captives. But the next line, to open the prison to those who are bound. By the way, I'll say to recover the sight of the blind, right? And to set liberty those who are oppressed. You see the point? But we know Old Testament, you know.
Me version and no eka say to your friends and look for no was it to proclaim liberty to the captives. Remember Yesu the same proclaim into Oka to preach the gospel to the poor, which is in verse 1. Oka to heal the broken hearted, which is also verse
there. Yes.
to proclaim liberty
To captives.
the captives. And Isaiah no eka to preach good tidings to the poor, to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound.
They are to open the enemy was to open the prison to those who are bound. But maybe that say, you know,
Okay.
or say to set liberty to those who are oppressed. Good.
Yes.
A little variation from how Isaiah quoted. And even maybe I say no crowd or sad be or sad can home or look no or say and to recover sight to those to the blind. Meaning say oh dear one. Good. Is there, but in Isaiah you don't find those passage there. And Ukanga calls it to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. And we used to proclaim the year of the Lord as acceptable. Yes. But my point is that the Old Testament passages were not meant to be verbatim. And the reason why sometimes there are slight differences. In fact, now here we say Jeremiah 31:31. Now Hebrews chapter 8. Now it's all compare. You might sometimes see differences. Acts chapter 2. Peter echo to Joel 2. You sometimes might find some word changes in there. The reason why sometimes these quotes from the Old Testament vary small from the original text, maybe I want to say, Shenzo say, as my phone, any Yesu, ever a translation of the Old Testament in Greek. In other words, when Jesus was in a temple, Jesus was reading from a Septuagint, was reading from a translation of the Old Testament to a Greek language, because at that time, Jesus noticed the language that was commonly used were Aramaic and Greek language. And apostles, any Jesus, they used extensively from these translations. So you have the privilege of looking at how the Hebrew look like and how, I mean, in other words, English translation is mostly translated from the Hebrew language direct. But Jesus Mono had the Greek Bible, which was a translation of the Old Testament to the Greek language. In the Jesus Kasa, sometimes he's quoting from the Greek language, the Septuagint. And when you compare the Septuagint to the Old Testament, the Hebrew, translated by English, you sometimes find this variation in the translation. So it's not the point is this: the Old Testament codes were not meant to be verbatim. Nti obi biara okan twerɛ no enche no nsusa no nsua de mfiri saa kwan no said it doesn't pose a problem for us to think about this and say why is it not that say a quote why is it not exactly the same thing. And we are judging the Bible from a 21st century glasses, and when you are doing that, you don't appreciate what the Bible is doing. It was allowed that they quote it, but they don't quote it verbatim. Meaning say we can't the making one.
I think our first video on this particular topic now, yeah, twice. I think the second video, we talked about transmission, and I said textual variations as a result of transmission, and I said translations. And yɛkyerɛ yɛma yɛte aseɛ sɛ woka asɛm baako afiri kasa baako mu anaasɛ woyi asɛm afiri kasa baako mu akɔ kasa foforɔ mu a, there is no way you can do verbatim. I think we're even talking about the French and English, which are very close to us, especially baby way. And words are French in the description adjective, English be adjective mbeba and sana we na bano. French be opposite. In Saudi free French mo ba na kasa transliterate here. Ebi ana kasa no anye your friend saying anye readable. And I say inti asia no anye adwuma. That is one point. Another point and say even in our 21st century nimpo paraphrasing is even what accepted. And I say go for a paraphrase and we attribute those paraphrases to a particular source.
Yeah.
And why can't we give the Bible the same fair judgment? Say obi kaso kotina so paraphrase here. What is wrong with it? And that point is also very important to say. The quotes of the Old Testament, especially in the New Testament, were not meant to be verbatim. Nimpa no one kasa or can dito. Nemo no. The import of the assembly was any here. Say some of us can, and we are fortunate. Say we are able to even refer and say oh sasemi ne ho fa bi ewo sasemi mu. And no add to the inspiration of the Bible. Say the person so many years after sasemi ye kan ye who says sasemi ena abemu. It's very important say for ebenya sa entiasi say you those variations now, it does not mean there is an error, there is a contradiction. There be. We thank you very much for that particular point. Okay, I said 4 points. I think we've talked about giving the Bible a fair judgment. We've talked about context. We have talked about your friends imprecision not being error, and we have talked about quotations.
Old Testament.
Old Testament quotations were not meant to be verbatim, and I say word for word. Anyway. Is there any other points that
there are other points? There are other points I made make ebia. My for back confirm. Yeah. It's in a bear. This is shape you are. Yes, I told you. But me for back on so the fifth point, me person your child said there are different time schemes in the Bible. Because the time schemes are you see, in fact, as it stands now, we are saying, if I'm not mistaken, Ethiopia ADH. I don't know whether Omudi anymore in terms. Yes. Good.
Even if hour the clock hour nimpona.
Yes.
It's from one country to the other.
Good. So
that be a birthday. I didn't tell me I met her no me who be ascend me have been say at the emirates ho. No crampono it's a good example say.
Good. Example I mean John Barney Ethiopia then calendar. You see there are two different calendars. The same thing works in the Bible. So the Bible were written from different places and different time schemes and stuff like that. Indeed, there are different time schemes sometimes that shows its head in the Bible. Let me give you an example so that a the making in the Bible. Let's go to the book of Daniel, chapter 1, verse 1.
Daniel chapter 1, verse 1.
Yes.
Almost free. Israel. Babylon. I'll say in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim king of Judah, into his hands with some of the articles of the house of God, which he
Good.
carried from the land of Shinar to the house of his God. And he brought the
Ɛhɔ a na
articles.
mepɛ. Ɛhɔ a na mepɛ.
Yes.
So the text in Daniel chapter 1, verse 1, no, I say it was in the 3rd year of Joachim. And Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, besieged the city of Jerusalem, trying to take it. And in fact, he took it in the 3rd year of the king Joachim. Yanko Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 1.
Okay. The word that came to Jeremiah concerning all the people of Judah in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, which was the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon.
Good. So he has said, which can you realize that he's talking about the same time? The time when Nebuchadnezzar beseech Jerusalem. According to Daniel 1:1, it was the 3rd year of the king of Judah, Joachim. According to Jeremiah, it was the 4th year of the king of Jerusalem, Judah, which is Joachim. But what's the problem here? The problem is this: those two books are using 2 different time schemes. Daniel is in Babylon, and Daniel is writing with the Babylonian scheme of work or time schemes.
Time scheme.
Yes, he's writing with Babylonian time scheme. Anna or they yet not there. But Jeremiah, who is in Jerusalem, is writing with the Jewish time scheme or Jewish view of how time is chronicled. Now, my main kind of saying at the point I said, well, Babylon say, Fanny say, Ohini bi bedi ade. Na obedi ade, me see a calendar. Obedi ade, let's say November.
November, that's August.
Babylon for no. That afini na when me sha say, when me sha afina say. Inti if pass August ba obedi ade no. Sa be pim December no. They count it as the year of ascension. Abra obedi ade. The next year become his 1st year. The next year becomes the 2nd year. The following year, so Babylonians had ascension time, ascension year, then the 1st year, 2nd year, 3rd year in that regard. Jewish too, no, they didn't have that. Jew no, so obedi November, dear November, crown. So I did that obedi November.
Count the calendar.
It's counted as well. Yes, it's counted. Yes, it's counted as the 1st year. Into no June bedia dia obedia de obedia ascension obedia de na that's this 1st year. The next year becomes a 2nd year, 3rd year, 4th year. Yes, yes, and that's the nipatis sadness here. These confusion that sometimes jump into people's minds about these age years and stuff like that goes off because Daniel is using the Babylonian calendar or the Babylonian scheme of time scheme. And in their scheme, they have a year of ascension before their 1st, 2nd, 3rd year, and that same thing works with that is different from what Jeremiah is using, which is the Jewish way of counting time. So clearly, at the frontier, yes, I said these are some of the things that should be at the back of our mind. Abraham can Bible contradictions or alleged Bible contradictions.
Yeah, that's Bibri. I think that this solves a lot of. It gives us a formula. Ama yet to me, they are very important. So, yeah, Bible mentioned with all fairness of mind, and that honesty say you perceive who no crana, you be who. Ye fa contest no wabra ye ni even addition ye ni prior knowledge be ample na say ye fair contest no na you take the test in it contest ye better ase bearing in mind obi kra ye tro asem no e de amano bearing in mind obi kra or tro asem no emre kra or tro asem no babia na owo a or tro asem no ne culture setting in part they said the ODMI said the schemes of time, and I said depending on the locations, schemes of time are more useful. One using the Babylonian calendar, one using the Jewish calendar. it will bring variations in terms of timing. Obia ebe recorded. That is very important. And another place, more jumpy, when we go to the Gospels now, things that one area, nimpa e jumpy bebre, omuka so mu errors, bebre na no, sa different accounts. Yen to ye bo yen hwese asem krona na way eka. And secondly, the quoted Old Testament text. No swami ati say they are not meant to be verbatim. Yenyanke beto so, but I think say yemre no eko bebre kakra. And then you see for 1 or 2 tests, but I think say so far the elaborations that we have made, nimpono, they are enough to give us a good ground and say obiara why crowd so besua ade no ebeboa no. Na yebeka yetifo bio say this is apologetic hour, and we are discussing alleged Bible contradictions. Alleged Bible contradictions. And we are careful to use the word alleged. And that's why we are particular using the word alleged. If say Nimpan is using said there are contradictions, but we feel that they are just allegations that or they have not substantiated it. Intino yada yenua Jonathan Mensa Bonsu ase. Na yadesre de yade mamo enyina ne say. Na watching mu nyina Chariot TV yetwa videos egu yeboa se ne ebe ya yebenya nimdie kese e wo kyerosem ne mu na ato yegidie mu na afoforo omo nso omo wo ehwo a nokura no abom no omo nso omo nya nokura ne bi nti wo YouTube, wo Facebook, wo Twitter, wo TikTok, Instagram no yebesre your website and also very active www.chariottv.com and also very active yenko ho na yensua de ema ye ho na yenhye nso ema nkrofo nso enche bi yenhye ema adofo nso enye bi no nso nsua enti yeda onu Jonathan ase nyakopon ya adom same time next week yebesan ene mo ahia na yene mo ache nyakopon asem 1 minute so wo enkra bia wo de beja yetiefo a
Yeah, the mechanic and say adofo my Bible the same here. In fact, some of these things, the reason why error strives in the world is simply because the Bible has been left there without opening. Yen the Bible no means yen kind. Yen pese betias yen more than bias betias and pen do I yet tiasian. I don't need bit me a see atrano na no create me enya kwan o wiase. Then it pet me a no cre. Na no cre hunu so amwa ya de share. Me da say odi uma me kwanya na yihia ye adwendwen Bible.